Hey everybody, it's DJ. I know I always say everybody, but it is everybody. Whoever's here is a body, and then it's everybody that's here. Today we have a class on, because we've been doing a lot of cooking classes, things like that, and so it's important to know how to handle foods properly. I think we've done something like this before, but this one actually came from a training that I did. And it really is, it's a lot more in depth, to make sure that, whatever you're handling is safe. I know that I'm not as particular about it, and some families aren't as particular about it, but it is very important to make sure that, whatever you're eating is still good and it's safe, because I've also gotten sick from people maybe undercooking chicken or undercooking fish or shrimp or seafood, and it is not a pleasant experience, if you go through that. So what we want to make sure that we do, or salmonella, like with eggs and things like that, I always go over making sure we're washing our hands. If you touch albumin, which is the clear part of the liquid of the egg, when you break the egg, which is a contaminant, but then it becomes the white part of the egg, which is the egg whites, but it's albumin. But when you break that egg open, if you ingest that, there's a good chance that you could get very sick from it. And so what we want to make sure that we do is that we're taking the proper precautions before we're preparing the meal and during the meal cooking process, that we're keeping ourselves safe and things like that. And it's kind of one of those things where people are like, well, I've never really gotten sick from it, so I'm not too worried about it. But everybody says that until they do get sick, and they're like, whoa, why didn't anybody tell me about this? I didn't realize how bad it could be. And, but then you got to kind of blame yourself, unfortunately. So let's go over. And this way, once you have it, it's kind of basic rules to follow. For any job that you're going to work in, if you're going to work with food, you're going to have to take a food handler's permit course. I had to do it when I first started working with food. They make sure that you have that before you can even step in on the job. If you're going to be serving food to people, you have to have your food handler's permit, saying that you understand what temperatures are correct, incorrect, where you're supposed to store food, how you're not supposed to store food, and things like that. And every restaurant, should have these precautions. If they don't, that's why they have inspectors come in. And when the inspectors come in, if things aren't up to code, you get shut down, and we don't want that. And so, it's best to just know. So let's start with page number 1. So this is food handling. The topics we're going to cover today are food product dating, refrigerated storage, freezer storage, signs of spoilage, and general safe handling of food and food products. All right, next part is, well, maybe the lighting could be a little bit better in here. Well, we got what we got. Food product dating. So I'll show you this. Food product dating. What is dating? So it helps store and determine how long to display products for sale. So, anytime you find a product that is perishable, and pretty much everything is perishable, but, some things perish a lot faster than others. You'll see that there's a sell-by date and things like that. And when's the best date to be used by. And then, definitely a date where do not eat this now because it's gone way too far past its expiration. So, it helps stores determine how long to display products for sale. Again, that's for stores. They have to follow these guidelines. Otherwise, if they make people sick, they can be shut down or people just won't shop there. Helps purchasers like you and I know the time limit to purchase or use a product at its best quality. After the date passes, product may still be used but not be at best quality, and does not indicate product safety. So if you buy something, and the thing is that you can usually tell, and there's different ways you can tell product safety. But if it's much past the point, like if you buy a piece of steak or something like that, I mean, I'm sorry for any vegans or vegetarians, but I like steak. But say you buy a piece of meat like a steak, or chicken or anything, or even vegetables. What you're going to want to do is make sure, like if it's been sitting in the fridge for a bit, you want to smell it, and you'll really be able to tell, like if it's rancid or not, or if it's going to be a nice cut. And most of the time, if you buy a steak, you want to cook it that day, and most people do. You buy a nice steak, then you want to go and put it on the grill. You want to put it on the oven or a cast iron grill and just really get it going. But you want to do it that day. If you let it go, then you want to freeze it. You don't want to leave it in the fridge. Fridge, it only stores things for so long, which we'll kind of actually get into even more. So, more food product dating. And you can always pause this video, in order to see a little bit longer what I'm holding up here. So there's a sell-by date, which tells the store how long to display the product, for sale. So there's a certain point where they have to, every store, once it gets past that date, then they have to actually get rid of that. Best if used by or before, so it's recommended for best flavor and quality. So they'll have two different sections. One will be the sell-by date, like you have to sell it by this date if nobody's bought it. And that's when you start to see deals on things, because they're like, oh, it's sell-by date today, so we're going to knock the price way down on this. Which means that it's probably best if used by or before is pretty much it has reached its end. But then it's for the best flavor and quality. The use by date is the last date recommended for use of peak quality of the product. And then none of the above of these reflect safety of product, just optimal quality. So, only you can really tell whether or not something is safe to eat or not. It ultimately does kind of come up to you and I, if we can tell that this is something that is safe to eat, and if it's not. Because, for me, when it comes down to it, I don't like to waste food at all. But if I'm in a cooking class or something like that, and I smell something, and I'm like, this does not smell right, and I see how many people are in the room that I'm going to be serving this food to, I will adjust my recipe and ditch that ingredient if I think that there's any chance that somebody could actually get sick from it. And that's kind of our responsibility overall whenever we're cooking, is to make sure that we're actually using a product that is safe for consumption. Because people actually die from food poisoning. Like, it can be really bad, so we want to be very careful. Okay, so refrigerated storage. So refrigerated storage. So all perishable foods, or foods that can go bad, should be stored at 40 degrees Fahrenheit, but not below 35 degrees Fahrenheit. So basically your fridge should be kind of set to that. I usually set mine right about 35. I'd rather it be colder, because the more you stock your fridge, the more stuff that's in your fridge, it's going to be harder to make sure that all those things stay cool. So and then you're also using power. So, so if you set it a bit lower, if you set it at 40, there's a good chance that a lot of things, it'll kind of warm up in the fridge, and then you might go over 40, which makes spoilage happen faster. All perishable food should be refrigerated within 2 hours, no more than 2 hours at room temperature. And read the label, because some things like peanut butter and things like that, you don't have to store it in the fridge until it's opened. Once it's opened and exposed to the air, then you need to put it in the fridge. But until it's open, and before it's opened, it can stay on the shelf as long as it says, with the sell by date, the best if used by, and you can see all those dates right there. Follow recommended guidelines on length of time. Perishable foods should be held at refrigeration temperatures. Examples of perishable foods: meat, poultry. So these are things that are perishable, so that will go bad, basically. Meat, which is basically they're saying steak, carne asada. I don't know if you have buffalo. It depends on what you're buying. Poultry, which is chicken. Eggs. Eggs definitely have an expiration point. Cheese, and you'll be able to see it on cheese. Other dairy products, leftovers that have been cooked, open shelf stable products. Open shelf stable products. But you'll be able to tell, and I'm sure we're going to get into it, but there are going to be signs that will definitely help you tell that, no, this is not good anymore. And, my rule of thumb basically, well, I shouldn't use that term, sorry, but my rule is really try to use whatever you're going to buy at the store. Have a plan for when you're going to use it by. Yes, if it's perishable, have a plan. Say, all right, like I have this and I need to use it in order for it to still have like optimum goodness, and freshness. I have to use it by this time. So I'm going to come up with a plan of what I'm going to cook throughout the week. So this one I need to use by this one I need to use by this, and this one I need to use by this date. And, and this way, if you make like 3 dishes in a row and then you just rotate them out, then you can have the same dishes and not have to eat them every single day, but you'll have 3 different dishes that are done, and you can store them in the fridge for a week, I would say is probably the best. But, just to make sure that, you're still, things aren't going bad, and you're not going to make yourself sick or anybody else sick. Now, freezer storage, much different than fridge storage. So here we go, freezer storage. Again, you can pause this if you need. If you're going to freeze food, you should freeze it at 0 degrees Fahrenheit or below, which is the freezing point. Or I think it's 32 degrees Celsius, but we go by Fahrenheit. Frozen foods will always be safe. And what that means is no microbes will grow or multiply. So once it's in the freezer and it's frozen, you're not going to have anything that's getting in there. It's frozen. But the quality of the food, it says may diminish. I would say it definitely does. You're going to need to use maybe some spices and things when you reheat that thing. Only because it changes the texture and everything of it. It's not as fresh. But freezing does not destroy bacteria or other microbes, but will keep them in an inactive state. Once foods have been thawed, any microbes present may become active and multiply. So again, all that is really saying is that there are microbes, but once you freeze something, it becomes inactive. It's the basic theory of like cryogenics, where you freeze something and it's supposed to preserve it for a long time. And microbes are so small that you can freeze them, but at the same time, they will, once it warms up, they will reactivate themselves. And it's almost like a hibernation period, and then they'll open up again, and then they can start to spread more microbes. So all it's really saying is that any microbes present may become active and multiply. It means you need to make sure you cook that food all the way through. And the safe methods of thawing food. So once you take it out of the freezer, you want to thaw the food. So you can do it in the refrigerator for some time, in cold water, and the very last one, which I would never do, is in a microwave. But the thing is that in a microwave, what happens is it ends up cooking the meat a little bit. I don't trust that. But don't put warm water. Thawing foods at room temperature is not safe. You want to, it's a gradual sort of thing. But you want to rinse it in cold water. You don't want to rinse it in warm water because, again, that'll cook it. So it's kind of weird that they have microwave in there. I mean, you can, if you know your microwave really well, I guess give it a shot. But I would rather do it in the refrigerator or under cold water and just really kind of let it slowly come back to, to where it was before you froze it. But that's first part of freezer storage. Second part of freezer storage. Okay, so freezer storage. Food products can be held at 0 degrees Fahrenheit indefinitely without concern for product safety. But now it says, but the quality will diminish. This other one said that it may diminish. Yeah, see, changing their story right here. But it will diminish, like I said. It's not a may sort of thing. It's not the same. That's why I say if you buy a steak, it's best to cook it that day. But some things are different. Like if you have an Instapot or things like that, I mean, you can really reconstitute and with different spices make things amazing, taste amazing. Frozen food products should be labeled with date to ensure good quality when using. Follow recommended guidelines on length of time. Food should be held at freezing temperatures. So, that's basically what we went over. Is you want to make sure that your freezer is set also to the right temperature, which is 0 degrees Fahrenheit. You could set it lower. The problem with that is that what you could do is you might end up with, it being over frozen and kind of get like sort of a frostbite, and then it'll kind of ruin the food a little bit. So you want to make sure it's at 0 degrees, but you also don't want to overstuff your freezer with foods, unless you have one of those big old freezers, and then you can put that in there. But that definitely it diminishes the quality of the taste of the food. I like fresh food. That's why we go out to restaurants. That's why it tastes so good when you're there, because they're not freezing. Well, hopefully they're not freezing their food. But you get there and they reconstitute it, or they get it fresh that day, and then that's why it tastes so good. It's also why it's so expensive. But, if you have a big freezer, I would definitely recommend putting things in there, and there are different ways of bringing back the flavor and things like that. Okay, now we're going to go over food spoilage signs. Okay, so this is the part that's on us, is the food spoilage signs. We have to pay attention to this if you're cooking with something. Mold present on the surface of the food. It's really obvious. Say you get it, especially with dairy products. It's really easy. Actually, it's easy pretty much with anything. You can see it on bread. You can see it on, but when you have like say some sour cream or cream cheese or any white, dairy product, and you pop it open and you're like, you'll see spots on it. That means it's done. Don't try to scrape it off and throw it away. No, it's done. You have to throw it away, and it's sad. Because like I said, I don't like to waste food. But you gotta throw that away. That can make you very sick, and it can make everybody in your house very sick. Off flavor. If you taste something and it's like, this doesn't taste right, don't keep eating it. That's when you're like, okay, sorry. I'll make something else. But I can't eat it. Or, if you're at somebody else's house, they happen to make something and it's off flavor, it's not worth getting sick, I promise you. And just say, I'm not feeling too good or something like that, but, you don't want to insult them with their food either way. There's also decorum. You don't want to be like, this is not good. Nobody should. Well, actually, maybe you should say that. I don't know the polite way of doing that. And maybe take the cook and whoever made it and say, I'm pretty sure this is spoiled. Maybe we do something else and order some pizzas. But. And then also there's discoloration, possibly bacterial contamination. You'll be able to see that in meat. There'll be almost like kind of a strange rainbow sort of effect on the meat, especially the skin of the meat. And when you see that sort of discoloration, that means the meat is not good anymore. And you don't even need to open it. You can, but you'll be able to smell it that it's becoming rancid. And that is not, there could be worms in it and all sorts of things. It's gross, but you want to make sure that you don't serve that to anybody. Changes in texture. Texture is just the way it feels. If it becomes too hard or way too soft and it becomes mush, yeah, if that's not the way you bought it, then it's no longer good. Gassing. So container bulging from gas buildup. Okay, so if you have something in a container and you've had it in there too long, what's going to happen is the gas is going to build up inside the container, and it will create a bubble on the top of that container. Now, here's two things. One is that you know that there's a gas buildup, and so that's no longer good. I'm not a fan of just throwing everything out. I know some of my friends would be like, if I see that and I've obviously done something wrong, I'm just going to throw it right in the trash and I'm not going to open that up. I would rather save the container, especially if it's a container I really like and it's my own fault. But that's number two. You want to make sure that maybe you even go outside, but you want to open that far away from your face. There's going to be a smell, and it's going to be a horrible smell. And have a trash bag ready just to dump whatever is in there if you're going to do that. But I mean, for me, I would, and then I can rinse it out and just kind of soak the container, especially if I liked it, and say I'm going to clean this. If the smell never goes away from the container, well, then you have to throw it out. But again, that's up to you. This is such a fun class. But again, this is what you'll have to take if you work at a restaurant. Slimy surface. If something's really slick and it wasn't before, like if you touch a piece of meat, or even if you get a piece of lettuce, you'll be able to tell the signs of spoilage even from that piece of lettuce by smelling it. And also touching the ends, like you can cut around some of the pieces of the lettuce that you can tell there's spoilage going on. But you can smell it, and then you'll be able to feel it. It'll get all slimy and weird and kind of fall apart. Yeah. Once anything is like that, then it's best just to be like, this is my bad. I should have made this. And again, this is why it's important to have a plan. Anytime you buy something for what you're going to cook, that's perishable. Off odor means if it, which are signs of infestation. Example: weevils and flour. Always check your flour. Hopefully it's in a container. If you just have it in the bag, and I do the same thing and just put like a clip on the top of it. But check it. You will definitely be able to notice weevils. You just kind of sift through, and there will be little tiny bugs in there. You got weevils in your flour. That flour needs to go. But if anything stinks and doesn't smell very good, you don't want to eat it. No, that's bad news. That is a sign that you either need to cook it for a really long time and then all the flavor's gone anyway, so you don't want to eat it then. Or, it's going to make you sick if you do eat it. And don't play with that. Again, have a plan. Have a good plan for the food that you buy and how long you're going to keep it by, and this is why these use by dates, sell by dates, everything are very important to look at whenever you're looking at food. I'm not the greatest with it all the time. Melanie is very good at it. I'm not the best at it. Okay, and this is our second to last page, but I'll just take the two of them. And so always wash your hands before and after handling food. Wear disposable gloves when handling food. So, wash hands before and after handling food is just basic, I don't know what you came in with your hands. on your hands when you came in to possibly prepare food for somebody or even yourself or anybody else. So it's best to just wash your hands. And then after you're done handling the food, you don't know what's left on your hands after you've done all that, and so it's best to wash your hands after that before serving. But you do that, and it's not difficult. And I do it. If you notice during my cooking classes, I kind of do it throughout the entire process. Before my hands will be clean. After I'm done cooking, I'll wash my hands. But during the process, I'm also washing my hands. Wear disposable gloves when handling food. This is always a good thing. In restaurants, they'll definitely make sure you do this, especially if you're going to have like an egg wash and fry something. You want to make sure that you have gloves on. Because again, nobody knows where your hands have been. I don't want to eat whatever you touched before. I don't know if you washed your hands after you went to the bathroom, things like that. I don't know. I don't need to know. But I do know that if you have gloves on, unless you went in the bathroom with those gloves on, don't ever do that. That's terrible to think of. but what I know, if you have gloves on, then, boom, boom. Even if you didn't wash your hands, you got gloves on. Still gross. Disinfect surfaces that had contact with other raw foods. Yeah, so when you have a cooking board, and if you're working in a restaurant, what they'll do is, you definitely have one board to kind of cook everything on. If it's red meat or poultry or anything like that, then what you're going to do is you can either just take the board and flip it, and then the other side is clean, or then you just toss it in a tub. And keep separate raw meats from other foods. Yeah, so you don't want to put the raw meat in the fridge with your greens, like your salads and things like that. But again, this is all good information just to know as you're cooking for the safety of yourself and your family, but also in future jobs, things like that. If you're going to work in the food industry, which is booming, actually. I mean, there's a whole channel on the Food Network. Again, maintain recommended temperatures for refrigeration and freezing, which is between 35 and 40 degrees for refrigeration and 0 degrees Fahrenheit for the freezer. Follow use by and sell by dates. Promptly refrigerate perishable foods. So, if you make a whole meal and people couldn't eat the whole thing, you want to get that in a container and get that in the fridge between, again, 35 to 40 degrees. And then discard foods that show signs of spoilage, mold, off color, off scent. It's slimy, and go from everything that you have there. But again, this will keep you and your family safe. These are good things to know, especially as we do cooking classes, because I don't want you to do any of my cooking classes, especially since I cook a lot with eggs, but I want to make sure that you're all very safe. Anyway, I miss y'all. Hope this has been educational and you learned something from it. And there will be more to come with it, just reminders. But at the same time, I want you to keep on cooking. Make that good food and make it safe. All right, bye.